Hi, everyone. Do you hear me? I hope that everyone can hear me. So let me introduce myself. My name is Olga, and I'm head of marketing at AppFollow, and I'm going to be moderator for today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon or evening, or perhaps morning or night, depending on where you are. I will just briefly tell you about the structure of the webinar. You can see that there is on your right-hand chat, on your right hand, there is a chat where you can write all your questions, ask directly to speakers or like to everyone or anything like that. So we are going to we're going to cover three main topics about mobile gaming. So the first one is going to be game development, second one is monetization, and the third one is App Store optimization. We're going to pass the imaginary microphone to our head of App Store optimization, Liam, but that's going to be later. So each topic going to be covered for around 20-25 minutes, and our speakers are going to answer 1-2 questions after that, depending on the questions. And after that, we are going to have few more questions. If you have anything burning, like any burning question there, let us know, and we will try to ask our speakers after the session, then post answers on social media. And after the webinar, we're going to send you the recap and the link to the video. It's going to be at the end of this week. So make sure you check all the communication coming from us. So we have today 7 amazing speakers, and let me start with introducing them. First is Ilya Kuznetsov, who is a client partner at Unity Technologies. Second one is Nate Barker, Director of Business Development at Kolibri Games. Then there is Manuel Pruter, owner at Bayarin Games. Andrew Filatov, who is a marketing lead at Wooga, and Rick Pedro, who is a chief marketing officer at LabCave, and Ivana Hryninchuk, who is the CEO of GameAnalytics. And without further ado, so why you all know that a few weeks ago at GDC, Google announced a new gaming platform, mobile gaming platform, Stadia, and after them, Apple announced the launch of Arcade in autumn 2019, and last week there was Snap, who announced their mobile gaming platform. And with the mobile gaming industry that is expecting to top $100 billion by 2021, and it is a very hot topic and one of the main, well, let's say, sources of income for gaming companies. So to start with a question as a warm-up, I would like to ask you guys, so before the launch of a new game, you're immediately facing so many different competitors. There are so many apps, mobile games out there in app stores. So how to make the launch process flawless, and what are your tips and tricks?
Henrik, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm gonna go first. I'm just waiting, being polite, just waiting for someone to tell me to do so. So I shall go first now. Thank you very much for giving me the word. To the question, source of inspiration. Obviously, I guess on the attendees, I'm gonna have many game designers. You know, in terms of inspiration, just everyday things, and see what probably our competitors are doing. Now, to the nitty-gritty into the business sense, in terms of how we know at LabCave, at least, that what we are getting inspired or getting insights from is going to be relevant for, or beneficial for our development for the future titles. It's likely to be where we see that there is a niche, or where we see that it's easier for us to get or to grab the audience attention. So it will be really easy for us, for Labcase, to decide to develop another puzzle or Sudoku game. Reality is that if you do your insights and you look into the both App Store and Google Play, you will realize that both verticals are super competitive. So rather for us to start fighting with the guys who have been there for many years already on top 1, top 5, top 10 positions, we rather focus on niches or tell specific keywords that we're going to attach to a specific game that we know it's going to be easier for us to get into and actually to grab our prospect audience attention.
What I can say to this is there's basically two variants of how you go into before the start of the development. Really, I mean, Henrik told a little bit about like how game designers approach it, and then there's of course the marketing approach where you identify niches based on, for example, underserved keywords. Just as a very simple example, if you check for like volleyball games, handball, ice hockey, etc. is very underserved in this niche. Everyone does football, but no one does volleyball, for example. So that is a way to look at keywords and the traffic potential it has, and the kind of way how to design a game around a theme, as opposed to a genre by mechanics. That is one key thing, what you can start basically to do. And then you do the usual way, you do like fake screenshots, basically you test them on an audience on Facebook or whatever, and see how much interest, how good your conversion will be. So it's very marketing driven from the get-go before a single line of code is written, would be my take.
Manuel, I think that we are having some troubles with the connection, but thank you very much for the insights. Guys, can you please write in the chat in case you heard Manuel or there was some issue? I see that there is some connectivity problems, but anyway, thank you. Joanna, do you have any insights, or guys, Andrew, Nate, EDI, any one of you, do you have anything else to add?
I think, Nate, if you want to take this one, because you guys make and launch your own games, I guess.
Sure.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about genres afterwards a bit, and kind of what we see in terms of what genres are more or less competitive right now, but I think you have some interesting insight.
Yeah, so our strategy when it comes to launching is that we're very eager to fail as quickly as possible and get that out of the way, so we don't have to do that with a big project that we've invested a lot of time in. So kind of our launch process starts super early on, just when we're beginning to develop the idea, and our goal is to get to the MVP as quickly as possible. So for those who don't know, that just means the minimum viable product, and for us that specifically means the most fun version of a game you can create in the shortest amount of time. And usually what that involves is first we'll test out a game internally, then we're going to take the game and we're going to test it out with like a few people on Facebook groups. And after that, we release it more or less into the wild across all geos, or a large number of geos, just to make sure that the game is not going to break. And then we'll release in the US and other major markets without any major fanfare.
Okay, so US is the first market for you to release it to.
No. So we'll start off.
Well, like the hard release, the major one.
Yeah. So like the game will be ready. Let's say we've QA'd it, and we think it's mostly fun. And then we'll release it in, say, like the Philippines and Indonesia and Malaysia, maybe some other countries that are typically lower ARPU, but English speaking, and just to make sure the game isn't broken. At this point, it usually has no monetization, no ads, nothing like this. And then as long as it works, you can release it in our view. You can release it in the U.S. and Great Britain and Germany and other places where they're going to spend a lot of money, without making a big deal of it. Just release it into the wild. The reason being is that At this point, we can then begin focusing on the single most important KPI when it comes to these soft launches, which is actually 2 KPIs. It's day 1 retention, and we're looking at like reviews or ratings. At that point, we know if it's good to go or not, even if it's just an MVP. If it's just game mechanics with no metagame and it's just the core elements, then that dictates to us what we're going to be doing, whether or not we're going to be sticking with the game. That's sort of our strategy there.
Okay, cool. Andrew, how is it going for you at Wooga?
I missed the question.
No, it was the same where we're still discussing on how to, like, when you are launching the game out there are already so many potential like competitors of yours, how to make the launch smooth. So, for example, Nate and Kolibri, they generally go with, the MVP version, like tested in the closed Facebook group, and then do the hard launch. How does it work for you?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Andrei from Wooga. This is something we're also doing. It really depends on the type of game you are doing, how much do you innovate, if there is something that is more or less proven on the market and you know how to make it better, or there is a huge innovation in the core gameplay. If there is innovation in core gameplay, it makes sense to validate it. Basically, yes, you're running an MVP in one of the key countries. It could be Canada, for instance. You collect some player feedback, you buy some media there, and then you check retention metrics, including the day 1. You can run a survey inside the app, inside the game, and check what's the impression of the people moving forward. Also, you can check the marketing funnel as well, because you're going to run the campaigns and you're going to see how your ads are performing, how your app store is performing as well, just to get an idea of how people are interested. After all, you can also do player interviews. So by collecting some phones from the players who were interested, you can talk to them, and it could be 10 to 20 people. You'll get some insights, what they like, what they don't like, do they like the gameplay in general. And that's how you can validate your MVP, the idea, and then if it's all good, then it's pre-production, production, and then hopefully soft launch and launch afterwards.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, we already mentioned, and I saw there are a few questions about different genres, and Jana already mentioned that topic. And I mean, I know that you all are from more or less different game genres. So how do you, besides keeping an eye on your competitors and trying to be better than them, how do you track trends even before the launch, like when you're on the stage of thinking of what you're going to release and what you're going to develop? How do you track trends in genres, and what's, and the follow-up question to this is, what are the ones to watch in 2019?
So I'll take this one, definitely. So first of all, at GameAnalytics, we publish these recurring benchmarks. So every 6 months, we will publish a benchmark of performance by genre in the mobile gaming market. So we'll look at the top app store genre, not actually at the top ones, at all the app store genres, and we'll do a benchmark on things like retention, session length, session count. So essentially, what is good KPIs for each genre? The latest one that I actually presented for the first time last week, and it's not out yet, so kind of you're getting an exclusive preview of what will be in the next one, is that the arcade genre is increasing a lot, and this is because obviously, I mean, it's because of hyper casual. It's for when we look at the genre, it most closely aligns with hyper casual. It has one of the highest numbers of new games. It has the highest DAO and some of the lowest session lengths. So it's really interesting that there are truly, when we look at our data, there are genres that are almost polar opposites. So if you look, for instance, at casino games, they're exactly the opposite. Fairly low traffic, but very high session length. So people will spend a lot of time, they will spend a lot of money, but there'll be fairly few people, whereas hyper casual will be tons of people spending a few minutes multiple times a day. So I guess one of the questions, or if you're building games, it's really important to decide what kind of game you want to build and then to look at that specific genre. I would argue that, hyper casual, although it's a massive trend right now, it's a catch-all for multiple genres. Actually, we see it mostly in arcade, but there's a lot of games that publish in Word. They're like Word games, for instance, which are kind of this crossover between casual games, but done in a more hyper casual fashion, like more simple. So I'd argue, think of what you want to do, then look at the trends for that specific genre, because if you're going to look at the entire market, you're going to find a bit of everything. So it's really important that you know what your strengths are, and that you play to those strengths. I think there's a feeling right now in the market that, hyper casual games are so simple. We're going to make a game in 2 months and get rich. And that happens to some people. We see people definitely go through that journey. But usually they're very experienced developers that have built games before. Yes, we have seen like the 19-year-old developer become a millionaire, but that's pretty much an outlier.
Yeah, that's not the rule that everyone cannot do the same. So unfortunately, because everyone would have been already a billionaire. But
exactly.
Super, thank you. That thinking that you first need to understand what you're going to do and then do a proper kind of research on that is quite a valuable insight. Enrique, do you have, with your experience, can you tell what are the kind of most popular game genres, and then how is it going with your clients?
What we are seeing today, other than going down to the easy answer, which is hyper casual, which is too broad to, I think to actually boil it down to a specific genre. We're seeing a lot of interest on the stories genre. That is, it's like when you're reading a book when you are younger, that you have like multi-story, that you have several options to choose from. There are several companies who are developing these games. We are one of them, which recently released our latest game, which is My High School Stories. It's about a story game where you just pick, you choose your character, and then you encounter different characters, and you gotta pick A, B, or C as an answer, and then depending on your actions, things the story involves in a different way. This engine is quite easy to develop. It doesn't require much investment from an art point of view, because you sure you can improve it, the animations and so on, but it's a static character more often than not with a static background. So what we're seeing is that it's fairly easy to develop, and actually it has really good retention rates. Day 1, day 7. If you have an engaging story, it's really easy to drive the to maintain the end user engagement. So my answer will be, at least for LabKit for now, for the near future, we are focusing down to the stories genre.
Cool, thank you. Manuel, do you have, I'm not sure if you were with us, I see that you are having problems. And while we're having, I'm wondering if you are here. And guys, by the way, if you don't hear anyone, try Chrome. For some reason, Demi may have some troubles with Safari, unfortunately. So my question was going to actually other speakers of ours here. Do you guys have any, let's say, insights on what game genre are going to be hot in 2019? And there is some.
I can take this one.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned that the arcade genre is growing at the fastest pace.
Oh,
but an interesting stat here, to be popular in the arcade genre, from what we see, to give you an idea, we have almost 70,000 games registered.
Wow.
So it's done on a massive data set. And we look at, when we do the genre, we also look at games over a certain size. With the analysis, we look at games over a certain size. So to be a kind of moderately successful arcade title, you need to have around 80 to 100,000 daily actives.
Oh, wow.
It's very hard to do if you don't have a publisher. So that's why I think it's a very hot genre, but it's very driven by successful publishers. Other genres that do well are in fairly simple kind of casual games are word and trivia. So they have really high retention, fairly good session length, fairly good monetization. So those are kind of the ones that we see from our data.
Cool, thank you. So, and how do you? So there are different genre, and then there are different types of games, and I believe that the success is different for each of them. How would you measure it? Like, what are the metrics, the key metrics for game publishers to measure when they're releasing, whether it's an arcade or it's a any other type of games there?
High-performing games is almost the same across all genres. So that's why we see it as the kind of the most relevant. And definitely what we see is above 40% day one retention to be considered kind of a performing game. Above or 15% or above 15% day seven retention. And usually it's kind of a third after that, but let's say like above 5% day 28 retention. What I find working with like tens, hundreds of publishers is that below 35% day one, nobody will look at your game. Like they don't care. And even at 35, between 35 and 40, they will expect you to do a significant amount of work. Once it gets past 45 day one, and you get past 15 with day 7, and you're close to day 20, you're publishable. You can find a publisher to do that for you. If you don't have those numbers, they're going to expect you to do serious work. If the game is below 30% day one retention, you need to throw it away. I mean, it's tough, but you need to throw it away. If it's below 30% day one retention, maybe you can do something dramatic to change it, but it's like a little fix won't do it. It's not commercial, like you can't commercialize it.
Cool. There is also a question about the casino section. If you have any insights about that, or was it related to any games there that you mentioned?
Question if it's
well, there was a question like if it was related to all the genre there.
Yeah,
it was okay. Super.
Yeah, it's retention is very consistent across genre. Like there are good games and there are bad games, and you're either in and like I said, the middle is above 30%, 35% kind of day one, and let's say above 12% day 7. That's where you start to feel like this game could work. I need to improve it. Yeah.
Okay, super. Now, most probably this question about the KPIs and what if you're hitting KPIs but not all of them, and what do you need to do? It might be the best question for Andrew or Nate or Emmanuel or Liam. Any of you guys do have any insights on what to do if you are hitting the right KPIs, but not all of them, or if you have just one that you are tracking and this is the must for you to reach?
Hey, so depending on what kind of KPIs you're not hitting, you have to work on it. That's kind of obvious. These KPIs could be game related. This could be also marketing related. I'm the marketing guy. Let's not to forget that the game should be scalable from the marketing standpoint as well. So depending on what KPI is out, you should.
What are the main ones for you?
There's plenty of them. For games, that's about the retention and monetization.
Top three. Okay.
Monetization, retention, lifetime value. Basically, they multiply by each other. That's LTV. For marketing, that's the marketing funnel. How are the benchmarks for the CTR of the ads? What's the install rate on the store? How we can scale? What's the ROI at the end? How different channels perform? And there are different ways to work on them. So if it's about the retention, this is a lot about the product, and you have to work on this type of features inside the product. If it's about the marketing, like the ads, people just don't click on your ads. You should work on your ads. So it's pretty straightforward, just depending on what KPI you have to work on. You focus on that. And if you're not there, then you can extend your soft launch, which often happens. Some games are in soft launch not for just 1 month. It could be 1 year. A lot of companies is doing that before they nailed all their benchmarks, and then they'll go to global launch. That's normal in the industry these days.
Cool. Is it the same for you, Nate?
Okay, there we go. In our case, I think what's important to keep in mind is that you basically have to pick one of these KPIs, and then everything else sort of telescopes out from that. So I mentioned kind of at the beginning when we were talking about our soft launch process that the things that are really, really important to us are basically rating and retention. And we're really only looking at day one retention initially, which for us is about 70%. And we don't want to see that deviate at all from doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the general App Store reviews or comments or things like this, which is a little bit more qualitative, but no less important than some of the harder metrics. And we can talk more later about how we actually aggregate all of that qualitative information. But initially, we're just kind of looking at what is impacting the retention. And the reason we want to use retention is that it gives us the widest amount of room for error. So if we can have a really high retention, particularly in day one, if we mess up something further down the line, we're not losing a huge amount of players. If we change our monetization at some point, we're not going to hopefully lose as much money as if we were to change something in the monetization that would be minute, but we had a very small number of players, which would have a wider effect on our revenue, at least in terms of real terms. So that's kind of like one aspect. And then beyond that, those two things, retention and ratings, everyone is sort of looking at one or two other metrics that are going to be really important for them here at Kolibri. So the marketing people are, as Andre definitely mentioned, are looking at things like the CPIs. What's going to be the cost? It varies, of course. So I think sometimes people are like, oh, what's a good CPI and what's a bad CPI? There is no good or bad CPIs. It's just whatever your target, whatever that particular demo does, and what is the return on ad spend, which would be the other thing that marketing is looking at. I work on a lot of the ad operations. So we'll look at the average revenue per daily engaged user, who's looking, how many people are looking at ads, what is the average amount of money that you're making from the ads. And sometimes this can be misleading. So the only thing I would close out my comment with here is that it's really important to, at the same time that you're looking at these KPIs, to maintain kind of like a broad focus, or to try and get the whole picture. Because to illustrate this, one thing we saw is that we can make our average revenue per daily engaged user, meaning if somebody watches an ad, they're an engaged user, and what we're making from them, we can look at that and we can make it spike. I can double it in about 20 minutes just by turning off most of my ads and only showing high value ads. But of course, this would have a real painful effect on our revenue. So which we've made some experiments where we turn them off. So the important thing there is just to make sure that you're looking at the whole effect when you're making changes and when you're trying to optimize those KPIs. Otherwise, it could be disastrous.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Unfortunately, I think that we have a problem with, or Manuel on his side, there is a storm in Cyprus. So I'm not sure if you could still hear us or
hear you anymore, by the way.
Okay, can you hear me now, guys? Super. Sorry, some issues here. So as I was saying here with the muted microphone, I was just saying that we already touched a bit the topic of monetization and the right KPIs to hit, and how do you choose the right monetization strategy for a game? What are your tips and tricks? What are your downfalls, and what was your experience here? I think that we haven't ever heard Ilya from Unity speaking, so Shall we start with you if you have anything to share here that is not under NDA?
Hi, everyone. Well, I will probably be able to speak from service provider side as I'm, well, not part of a game company. But I guess the first thing that we urge publishers and our partners to think about is, what do you actually sell, like with your game? And you should start thinking about monetization from the very first days. And there's a big mistake that a lot of new developers are making, which is, oh, we're going to develop the game now. Once we have the whole game done, test the metrics, we're going to think about the monetization after. That's not really how it should be, because say you're working on a mid-core, I don't know, battler game, right? And you have the whole economy built. You have thought about how long it's going to last, the cycle of the session, and the LTV of a user and everything. And then you decide to add ads, or you decide to change the prices of some app store bundles. And this is when the problems happen, because by adding ads, you can break the whole economy, and you just lose a huge portion of, okay, with midcore, it's not huge, but it's still a significant part of money that you can otherwise earn. So long story short, tip number one, think about monetization strategy from the very first day when you start building, concepting your game, because this will actually help you with coming up with some extra gameplay features. You'll get more triggers. You will have more points of interaction with the users. You get more data. So basically, you have more knowledge about what your audience is, and it's going to help you in further days with optimizing and growing your game, because scale is something that everybody has to think about. But a lot of developers, newcomers especially, they get stuck on this. So say you build a game, you have enough content, and then your game is just unscalable. And yeah, so when your game is unscalable, you have no place to move, you have no place to grow, and no ads, no IAPs can save it. You have to have a long plan and many backup plans as well.
Have you ever had a client that pivoted their monetization strategy after coming to you, or did you make them, or like was it an advice, anything like that?
So quite a few new indie developers are asking for advice, especially when it comes to ads. We do have a lot of different good practices on how to implement ads in different genres. Specifically talking about casual games, idle games, clicker games, hyper casual. Well, hyper casual is just interstitials and banners, right? If we talk about casual games and idle games, the most popular ones are like double the earnings for offline time, or get some multipliers on the gold or any kind of soft currency earned inside a game for a certain amount of time. There is also mostly our new partners are asking about how many impressions per day per user should have, and there's no fixed golden answer to this. You should test it. Some believe that 7 impressions per day is like the optimal amount. I would agree and disagree, because it heavily depends on the session length, and it depends on your retention rate. So if you're sorry, I moved away from the topic a little bit, but basically, yeah, we do have publishers who come and ask us to help them with the implementation, especially the UX part, because sometimes the interface is not really intuitive. People don't understand that they will get a reward by clicking on the ad and watching it, or the button is not visible, or it's hidden somewhere after 3 steps, like in a store. Like you go to menu, then you have to go to like get 3 coins, and then you have another button. It's too difficult. Ads should be very visible. The button should be visible. If you want to incentivize your users, then you should show them where to go.
Cool. Guys, the ones from the publishing companies, do you have what is your experience here on the monetization, and what are your best practices? Do they correlate anyhow with the I just said, or how does it work for you?
It's Enric here. Well, I guess you guys see me. What I tell most developers when they come to us to asking us this question is that if you are figuring out your monetization strategy by the time your game is going to be released, it's 98% sure you're gonna fail.
Oh, wow.
Like guaranteed. Like I'm quite vocal about that. If you want to make a living out of developing games, you have to think it as a business, and as such, you want to work out where your revenue sources are coming from. One of them are likely to be advertising within your game, and as such, if you need to think how you're going to implement that and how you make it as natural as possible to be shown within the game. Those that do well are those that are as less interactive as possible or are as meaningful as possible to users despite being an ad. And as such, back to your point, the monetization strategy is just thinking right away from early stages of development, how I'm going to monetize this game, where my revenue is going to come from, and from there, you just do your own research. Obviously, they are the usual suspects and many others that are happy to monetize or manage your inventory. My suggestion there is just to go with a partner that understands gaming, that probably is working or has been working with other game developers, and as such can assist you as well on what will be the right strategy for your own game. Now, it's really hard to pinpoint a specific strategy for every single game. But again, I'm going back to my original point. If you're working out your monetization by the end of the game development, you're doing it wrong.
Cool, thank you. Nate.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Can I add one more thing? So I started my answer with developers have to know what they're trying to sell. And well, basically the short answer is well known in the industry, it's progress, because people buy progress. People buy something that helps them progress faster. And same applies to ads. You use ads to help users get through the game to a certain point faster, because this is what charges and incentivizes users and players.
Yeah, of course. If you're stuck on one place in a game and you cannot just pass it because there are not enough resources for that, of course, you will have to push the gamers to kind of earn it somehow, either buy it or earn it somehow there. Iwan, I see that.
I wanted to add something. I wanted to add that in this kind of ads versus IAP, we used to see a lot of these kind of solid mid-tier games that published on the App Store, self-published, made organic traffic through features and so on, and would have like anything between 50,000 and 300,000 DAO. Some would have a little, maybe more than that. And that would monetize with IAP, and kind of there will be small studios mainly focused on just making games that they liked. And I think with the changes to the App Store, this is kind of this is changing a bit. Also with the changes in the market and people being very competitive and essentially buying their way into the top of the charts. These studios, I think, are having a harder time to make their games as visible as they used to. So I think this used to be a viable strategy for a small studio 2-3 years ago, and it's not anymore. I think the monetization strategy needs to be very clear and very tied into the user acquisition strategy. I don't think those two things can be separate anymore. You need to know how much you're going to pay for a user and how much money that user is going to make you. And if you don't have both of those things, you don't have a monetization strategy, really. You kind of have a hope that you'll sell something to some people who will come out of nowhere. So truly, I think it can't be overstated that that now the monetization strategy kind of combines it, or has the UA strategy built in, and that if you don't have the skills internally to do that, then either a publisher or a partner or somebody who can help you get better visibility onto the App Store and solve that for you is very important. Otherwise, maybe your game can do and convert great, but you're just not going to have enough people playing it.
After all, we're all the kind of game publishers, they're focused on earning some money. It's not just for developing it for fun.
Yeah, of course. But it's definitely harder to self-publish and just make a living off organic than it used to be.
Of course. Thank you very much for actually touching the in-app purchases topic. That was my next question. And And Andrei, maybe you can share some insights on how you are doing it in Wooga, and if you're using both ads and in-app purchases, or what works the best for you. How do you define, pricing for, or better, how do you set KPIs for any of them?
Yeah, so we do free-to-play games. They are mainly puzzle hit. 70% is or more is still IAP, and this is quite consistent for us. So ad monetization is a good addition for the revenue, but IAP is still the main one. And I would say the majority of potential to grow is also, at least at the current stage, is IAPs. If you look at the games, it's in a strategy category like Clash of Clans, some more mid-core games, hardcore games. That's how they make their lots of money, and the LTV is enormous, right? It could be hundreds of dollars for certain users, and this all comes through IAPs. With ad monetization, at least at this point, you're a little bit restricted by such huge numbers, and if you look at hyper-casual games, it's all about having a lot of players, and your revenue per user is lower. So that really depends on what you want to do about it. And a minor addition to that is, since recent Apple in particular is pushing the subscription model.
Okay.
We see it a lot outside the gaming, which is like services, Netflix, Spotify. That's how they make their money. And this is a big thing. Looks like gaming has not adopted it yet, at least mobile casual gaming. We see it a lot back in the days like World of Warcraft, right? It was the subscription model, basically. And this could be a big thing, next big monetization strategy for games as well. And I think everyone is waiting for those who will nail it so far. But I would say that, yeah, do ads. That's the most important, depending on your game. And in-app purchases is something that you should really focus on moving forward. And finally, a lot for in-app purchases are coming from your live ops, how then you develop your game and how you operate it. And this is all about running events, doing some community promotions, sales, this type of thing. They help you make a lot of money moving forward.
Yeah. Nate, how does it work for you?
So, cool. When it comes to our in-app purchases, basically in our games, there's like two levers that you can pull. And the way that we think about this is, how are we manipulating the two levers? So the two levers, being that it's an idle game, are going to be money, and they're going to be time. So money is, what is the payout of something? How much money have I made? How much money is something going to cost? That's a money lever that moves in the opposite direction. And time is something like, how long does it take me to build something? How long does a reward last? And these types of things. So at any given point, we have basically like these two types of levers that we can pull or we can apply that are going to change the user experience. And what we use them for is to relieve pressure on points in our game that are they're like pressure points. So the game itself is an economic simulator, and pressure points are places, or choke points are places where players need to upgrade something in order to continue advancing. Else they get, there's no progress, and things just kind of grind for a while. So we think about our monetization in just the places that we can either apply the binary of on/off, like this is fast or this is slow, or a variable increase or decrease in whatever the particular thing that we're trying to change is. And this is how we apply our monetization strategy. So things that are going to be a binary are usually rewarded videos. So that's something where it's just easy to turn on and off, or turn on and off for certain periods. For something where we want to give the user maybe a little bit more control, that's or a little bit more game, that's something that's going to be an IAP that they'll purchase. So we have collectible characters that have different advantages. That's an IAP and not a rewarded video. it's thus far worked out that we're probably about 50-50, 50% in-app purchase, 50% IAP, and that varies. And the primary reason that it will vary will be on the ad side. So 50% ads on the ad side. It will be if there's a large campaign or if it's the holidays or something, and particular networks are getting more traffic, particular ad networks. On the IAP side, we do run live ops. And this is a huge part of our success lately, or we found a lot of success with this. In some cases, we will see our ad revenue, or I'm sorry, our in-app purchase revenue double for the period of for the live ops period. We initially started out, if you're an indie out there, presumably some people are indie developers in the audience. It's not as daunting as it sounds to get started with live ops. They can be relatively simple if you're baking in whatever the content is and you activate it remotely with, you know, if you have a server, you can do this. We use PlayFab for player services, which allows us to do this. There's probably even simpler ways to do that that might be more dangerous, just using the system clocks. And over time, you can add in all the fancy stuff that's downloading content remotely. But this has been super, super huge for us. And in fact, we added that way later. We added in-app purchases well after the game had already been launched. We had these choke points that existed already. We had these levers in mind, but we didn't actually add the in-app purchases until users started demanding ways to spend money in the game, which is always a good problem to have and a good request from our community.
Maybe they just send you a message like, we have some spare money to spend. Can you please?
Yeah. They literally said like, hey, we want to buy things. How do we buy things? We want to support you guys.
Cool.
And we're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. So we added that stuff. And I think that's, in our case, it was because the games were so community minded and we try and incorporate all the feedback that they have. It made it a little bit easier. And I think that points to one of your earlier questions is that early on, and the reason that I think a lot of hyper casual developers have such a hard time is because the games start off and they're actually perfect for ads because of the way the experience works. They're perfect for pop-up ads. There's no way to shoehorn in-app purchases to an experience that's built entirely around, you know, segmented experiences that are blocked by ads. Like if that's the way the whole game works and that's what your choke points are, then adding in-app purchases like will never really make sense. And that's probably a consideration for developers is that unless the game has this innately, unless it has these things that you can manipulate innately, it's going to be near impossible to derive any sort of additional revenue after a certain point.
Yeah, there was a good question there in the chat, I think even before you started answering my question. They were guys asking, is there a way to predict the average revenue of the implemented monetization system before the launch? Or should they first test to learn how it's going to work?
Sorry, which question? Whose question is that?
The question was, is there a way to predict the average revenue of an implemented monetization system before launch? So can you predict anyhow, I mean, if you're going to launch in-app purchases or ads, or how are you going to predict the return on ad spend or return on the...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much data out there in terms of, you know, what, if you're familiar with the advertising world, what CPMs are going to be common in your, in your whatever region you're launching. So, you know, the US will have, you know, a $20 CPM and maybe you'll get a $30 CPM in like the Nordics or something. So that should be relatively easy to predict. If you know things already, the session lengths, you know, if you know how often somebody can use a boost in a conceivable amount of time, right? So we basically time box the amount of boosts you can have, so people can watch as many ads as they want. But after about usually about 8 ads, you kind of run out of things that you're going to boost for that day. So we know that, and so we can make a prediction based on CPMs, again, the value per ad shown.
Does it work for new games as well? I mean, when you're launching a new game, how do you count, like how do you plan on what are your you know, time frames there for the boosts and things like this?
Yeah, for the boosts and things like that, we err on the side of giving players too much, so that it's just too easy for them, just because we want to keep that retention. I think maybe other studios, if you're working on in-app, like some IP thing, you know, for instance, if you license the Batman IP, you don't really have this option for you. If you have a really complicated game, which is, you know, going to be like an SLG or strategy game that's going to reasonably take you, you know, 6 months to a year to build. This is the kind of stuff that you'd probably need to have more sophisticated models, even using some of the average assumptions out there. You can just Google to figure out what the purchase percentages and stuff like this are for your assumptions. But there's probably somebody in the panel that has a little bit more experience with like more of the deeper modeling for predictive stuff.
Okay, guys, do you have anything to add there then? We have one more last question for the monetization part, and then we will start with the questions about the App Store optimization. Perhaps, Ilya, maybe you can add anything there from like based on your experience.
Not specifically for this question. I would add that it's important to remember that your player experience is very important, and some developers that go really hardcore with ads then complain that their game App Store ratings are falling to like 1 or 2 stars because they're spamming ads like 1 hour before the others finished showing, you know. And this is definitely not the right way to do. Ads should be complementary, and so
not take the most of your time, the player's time.
It depends on how long you want your game to survive, right? If you want your game to be alive for a couple of days, then of course you can spam users with ads and just take as much money as possible. But that's not a good practice, and I would not recommend that. Let's think about different genres. So we haven't touched the difference between monetization of different genres, say casual, hyper casual, mid-core, hardcore. There's a very, very visible change of the breakdown of sources coming from IPs and ads. The more hyper, the more casual the genre is, the more ad revenue out of total revenue you get, usually as your monetization strategy. And that's understandable because the easier the ads, the more casual the players, the easier the game, the simpler the game, the more casual the players are. And casual players are usually not hardcore. They don't spend that much money as hardcore players. And that's a very important thing to remember. I mean, maybe people from the studios can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what we've noticed. And the breakdown of payers and non-payers are really different among genres. And they're even more different between developers because it really matters where you're buying and getting your users from. So organic is one part, acquiring users is completely different. You should make sure that you're buying a relevant audience and going for like cheap networks that are promising you incredible results with the lowest price, global coverage. It doesn't exist. Like you cannot get value for zero money. It's almost impossible.
Of course. Just to wrap up the this part, promise it's the last question. So Google Play Instant became available for everyone a few weeks ago at GDC. Guys, have you ever tried, whether it's the, I don't know, Andre, you or Nate, you or Ilya, maybe it was your side, have you tried Google Play Instant? How did it work out for you? Would you recommend it? And if you have any insights on, you know, just a short, a few sentences. And
so we haven't yet.
Are you going to?
We're planning to. The main challenge for us is to make a proper game, given all the technical restrictions. So it should be something very small. And also we noticed that as far as we know, not so many people clicking on this try now button, at least for casual gaming. So this is some data we collected. So we're about to try it, but we haven't tried it, so nothing to share.
Cool. Nate, have you tried it? Google Play Instant.
3 per. Okay, hold on. We have.
How did it work out for you?
Okay, cool. So we have tried Google Play Instant. The way that we built it is that we took our most popular playable ad So we run on a bunch of like exchanges and Facebook, and we run a bunch of playables. And stepping back, our experience when it came to advertising with playable ads is to actually not try to completely replicate the experience or the onboarding experience of playing our game. Instead, we try to distill it to the most the fastest version. So it takes maybe 5-10 minutes to really get started in playing our game, and we just accelerate that so you can have all the fun within 30 seconds. We took that version, we changed the UI just a little bit, so there's a little bit more information, added a little bit of music, and we based our playable around that. It looked great, it felt great, we released it. The downside is most people just don't use the playables, or the instance. So it's cool. I'm glad we have it.
But just to play
the amount of
with
quantitative data that we have on that is super limited. We're going to continue running it because over time the percentage of people that are playing it is increasing slightly. But at this point, it's not measurably enough. And I think if I were in the position where I had very limited resources, I probably wouldn't build these Google Play instance or if I had something else that I needed to devote those resources to.
Okay. Well, this is, I think, a good question to move to the App Store optimization and how to get more users. And I would like to introduce our head of App Store optimization, Ilya Kukharev, who is going to moderate this part of the conversation. Stay tuned, guys. And Ilya, there you go.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So hope you hear me well. And I want just add a couple of points to the Google Instant apps. Like it's worked best for the strong and big apps. Like when you don't ask your user to download 1 or 2 gigabytes of data and just download 5 megabytes or 10 megabytes sample and try to play it. Like the brightest example, I guess it's a Guns of Boom. They did the instant app when you just open it in a couple of seconds and try to play one of the levels, and you see that it's how it's what is the game and should you download it or not. Of course, it's work not so good for the casual games when they're small and you can download it just it, and you can check the videos or screenshots to understand what this game is about and all this stuff. So as for tracking, you always can choose for example, amplitude and make some events for the downloads and for the launches and all this stuff, and try to match how much users are downloaded your games after trying the instant app. So we try to use this instant app for some of apps, not games, and it works well. And for example, people don't want to download several travel apps. They just check the instant apps and see if it's okay or not. So let's move to the App Store optimization part. So I guess Hendrik can assist me here, as we are both doing App Store optimization. As for me, I'm doing it for about 5 years already. So I can tell you something interesting today. So the first thing, actually, how do you guys are doing with ASO? Do you prepare it by yourself, or maybe some agencies, or what about creatives or graphics or something? What do you think is more important before launching the game? For example, you are launching the new title, and what should you prepare at the first time? Maybe some keywords or graphics or icon. What is more important? For example, Hendrik, what do you think?
A lot of questions in a short period of time. Let's see. Important thing. Make sure, right, the most important thing is make sure that you use all the space available on your keyword space, the subtitle and the description. You will be surprised how many developers we are assisting with our AirSo expertise, and they completely ignore the fact that they have perhaps 5 or 6 more characters to fill on their keyword parameter. That's an additional keyword that can help you to improve your organic installs. Now, other than the obvious, which is doing your research, see what your competitors are doing, and don't leave ASO for your intern. Just have it something that is on your to-do list, at least on a I'm not going to say daily basis, but at least on a weekly basis. Definitely want to invest some time doing some A/B testing. It can be as simple as testing different icons or just changing the order of your screens. You don't even have to pay for it. You can actually use Google Experiments, which is a free tool by Google. It allows you to perform A/B tests on your creatives and icons, for instance, and you can see what works best on different countries. And you will be surprised. I mean, on some instances for our own games, we tried some bold tests, and that is something that we think it's never do better than what we have right now or currently working. And we are more often than not surprised on what our customers or users like the most. So my suggestion will be try to be bold and have different approaches, and whichever increases the Google's confidence rate or whichever improves your conversion rate is the one that should stick for you to move forward and keep improving further.
Yeah, okay. So I think that when we're talking about ASO in games, I think that graphics are more important than text optimization, because the general channel for games in App Store and Google Play is browse. So users don't search your game like I want to find the shooter game or something. They maybe search at general words, but mostly they are browsing categories. For example, if I want to find the new casual game, I just go to the top 3 charts or top page charts of board games, of casual games, and trying to find my game there. So the graphics here are more important, and the icon, you should pay more attention to your icon as you see it in the search results in the top charts. And also if your game will be chosen for featuring, for example, you should have the right screenshots when user will see what is your game is about. Maybe there's some videos. For example, in App Store, it has the autoplay feature there, and you can show your user what is your game is about and how he or she can play it, and show it. That's amazing. And also I see this question in chat about the transferring results from Google Play to App Store. So if you optimize screenshots text on Google Play, you don't have to transfer them to App Store like one-to-one. So you can transfer the text, for example, because text in App Store are not indexing, but you can't transfer the screenshots because there are different situations in App Store and Google Play. When you see the screenshots on the search results in the App Store, and in Google Play you can see them only on the app page. So you should test screenshots in the App Store one more time, but you can transfer, I think, the icon there, because icons are pretty the same. So if your icon works in Google Play, you can try it in App Store, and I think it can be done. So
yeah.
So
as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please join us.
Yeah, so I completely agree with both of you talking about it, and I would say that App Store optimization even starts when you just deciding on how you name your game or what's the title, and there could be also different approaches to that. This could be a made-up name, and then you should rely on building a brand around it, or this could be using some of the keywords that would be relevant to your type of game and that are quite frequent. For instance, for June's, we have a game, hidden object game, is called June's Journey. So on the one hand, it sounds well, right? On the other hand, it includes this journey as a keyword, which is very relevant to this type of games, which is hidden object games, where you have some story. And it's a smart move to think about it. And of course, on top of that, then you work on your title, subtitle descriptions. But the name of your game is going to be everywhere, and that's
that's correct. So also, I think you should optimize for different countries, as you should optimize your graphics. Like maybe if you have some words on the icon or something, you should translate it to the local languages. In case in Asian languages, just Chinese, Japanese, they usually don't read English words. They need their own native words there. So it's extremely important to optimize your graphics if you're talking about games. What about testing, guys? How often do you test your creatives? Like, for example, for us, we suggest the testing at least 2 times per month, and trying to find the new ways, trying to find the new CTAs or maybe some new images on icons. So what do you guys think? Is it enough, or we should test more often?
On our side, we test once a week, so 3 to 4 times a month. I think you are on the right line. Now, another question that we normally have after this one is how many clicks we should send, or what the right confidence level. Because I've seen in the chat that had a question similar to that on those lines. Different tools might suggest you different guidelines. At Labcase, from 500 to 1,000 clicks is when we start to draw conclusions. Over 2,000 clicks, we already should know for sure what's the winning variant. Obviously, each game and each OS has its own specific things, but overall, I would say at least test 3 to 4 times a week, let it run for 500 to 1,000 clicks, and then draw your conclusions from there.
Yeah, agreed. So also you should test your creatives not only for the organic traffic, like from ISO. Also, you should test your screenshots and icons for the paid traffic, because when user come from the, for example, Facebook ad or other types of ads, he or she sees your app page, and they should understand what is your game is about and how he or she will play it. So it will help you to increase the conversion rate to install. That will help you to rank high in the App Store and to make the more fine numbers in your Facebook analytics, for example.
Another interesting way is that you run a really short campaign on Facebook, super targeted. So you spend maybe $10, $15, $20, runs different sets of creatives, see which one gives you the highest CTR. That one is the winning one, and then you can apply that to further testing within the App Store.
Yeah, this is the great opportunity of A/B testing in App Store, as you know, Google Play allows us to test the creatives there, but App Store don't. So I think there are 2 ways for now of testing the creatives, like in for Facebook campaigns with these small Facebook campaigns, and the other way is the App Store search ads testing, when you should upload 10 screenshots to your app page and then create one campaign with different metadata sets. Like you will see your ads, and there will be 2 metadata sets, and then you can compare what is performing better, where you can get more installs, and what users will pay you more eventually. So as we know that the featured for games is a dream for all game developers. So when you get featured, you just open champagne and all this stuff, but there can be some dangerous things. For example, if you got featured. If you have, for example, 10 installs per day, you got featured, you got 10,000 installs per day, but eventually in the end, you'll get your earlier 10 installs per day, because you're not doing KSO, you're not optimizing your app page, and features just bring you to the sky and then bring back you to the ground after that. So what do you think? Where is more easy to get featured, in App Store or in Google Play? I think that is App Store, because there you have this form that you can fill, and maybe they choose you. But how is it's work in Google Play? Should I call the Google Play managers, or write in email, or what should I do to be featured on the Google Play?
I mean, it's for both. You should get in touch with the platforms and ideally have a good relationship with the partnership managers. And there are lots of them for every certain region and for the countries. They're very open and would like to promote the local developers. We are in Germany, so we're in touch with the German colleagues and it works great. I would say for Apple and Google, it feels like there is a little bit different methodology how they pick those who they want to feature. Seems like Apple is more interested in those who do something new, something innovative, something bright. There could be just something cool in the game that is sold as a premium, and they may feature that. And so Google, on the other hand, is more interested in growing the revenues. So if they think that your game is going to bring them a lot of revenues, or they make some money out of that, and you have just to prove in your pitch deck that they're going to make a lot of money through helping you with the featuring. Well, for Apple, it's much more just show how unique you are, and that's what you have to highlight. That's my take on that.
Actually, I think that both platforms are interested in money. So if they see that you can bring the many in-apps and all this stuff, they will choose you. Okay, so what can be dangerous in featuring? For example, in App Store, my game will be featured. Or what can be dangerous for me? For example, any issues or
we had situations where we didn't expect. Long story short, we had a super up, as you mentioned, going from 10 to 10,000 would be a dramatic case. But if you didn't have your service play ready, that might crash the game, and then more coming users might not be able even to load the game because your system just crashed. So that could happen. It's a good problem to have, but you're missing the opportunity. But because by the time you fix it up, you probably missed the good chunk of your incoming traffic. Now, more than a problem, what we see at LabCave as well is that most developers dream about having a featuring, but when even if they get one, they don't milk it as much as they could. If you have not been working on your conversion rate optimization, and you know that your App Store page is as appealing as possible to your prospect customer or user, even though you got a featuring, you're probably not going to have as high conversion as you would if you have been working on it for a few weeks doing, the testing that we were talking before, doing the ASL on the creatives. So definitely, even though, a lot of people focus on getting the feature, it's about, as you mentioned, getting ready for that feature and making sure that you make the most out of that opportunity.
Yeah, agreed. So that can be the real issue when you got featured and your app or game got many downloads and your servers are down. So nobody can use your game, nobody can play. They definitely will go to the App Store and Google Play, will leave you a negative review. So eventually the result of your being featured will be rating 2.0, for example, with thousands of negative reviews.
Right.
And when the game on the Google Play gets this kind of rating, I think it's done for the developer.
You have a game, you have a great game with 2 stars review overall, and then you gotta release it again because you had a feature. So that could happen. Yeah, absolutely.
So you should definitely pay attention to your server capacities or maybe support center, so they should be ready for the feature. And I think we can go to the next question as we're talking about reviews. So do you guys work with your reviews on the App Store and Google Play? Do you answer them, or maybe you have any insights of how to find the user that don't like, for example, your game, and to ask him more about his issues, for example?
Yeah, overall, I would say that the main thing you should do, you should reply to reviews, especially the negative ones. Sometimes when you had a good conversation with those who got pissed off somehow by you, you could turn it into a positive client. And also your fans and your advocates should also be rewarded by getting in touch by some of your company representatives. And yeah, that's what you do. You should talk to your community. They want to be heard, and they want to be heard.
Yeah, agreed. You definitely want. Reviews have an impact on your conversion rate for sure. One of the first things that you're gonna do when you are thinking about downloading an app or a game is see what other users think about your app. So at least myself personally, if I see a game or an app under 4 stars, quite unlikely I'm going to bother to download it. Now, what we have with many developers and even with our own titles is what to do when you have a game that you know that it's good, but overall it's sitting into bad reviews. My suggestion there would be just to release the game again. You can literally start from scratch and then get rid, quote unquote, of those bad reviews, and then hope that you fix the problem, listen to their comments, and then hope that on your upcoming release you get a better review from your user base.
Yeah, so but now you can it can be hard to release your game because Apple can reject you because this game already exists. So you're just making a copycat of your own game, and this is not so simple for now. Yeah, but anyway, you should take care of your reviews. You should take care of your ratings because it's really impacts your conversion rate. Really impacts the paid traffic acquisition performance and all this stuff. So yeah, so I think we have a small talk about selling games, and the main features here are that you should pay more attention to your graphics. You should be prepared for feature it, like prepare your servers, prepare your community, and also take care of your reviews, take care of your ratings, because if you lose, for example, your rating to the 3.5 or 3.6, you can lose about 50% of downloads, and that will affect your monetization, that will affect your future of your company, and so take care of your ratings. So I think, yeah, so I guess
thank
Olga,
you very much, guys. Yeah, actually this is a wrap. So one more thing to ask you, all of you guys, all of the speakers here, one that you would say is crucial for making your game a success. Elias, you are on the screen. You want to go first?
I think you should definitely talk with your players. Like, don't leave them alone, because especially if they have some troubles with your games, maybe some connection issues or anything else. Like maybe you guys remember when the recent games from the Elder Scrolls, I don't remember this name. It has connection issues on the launch, and nobody answered them, and users just leaving negative reviews there, and now they have a 2.0 rating, and
you mean Blade?
Yeah, I mean Blaze. So we don't talk about that. That was a not really good game, but they don't pay attention to their customers. They don't pay attention to their users, and don't reply to their reviews. And it's
okay. Reply to
it's sad
reviews
for us. Yeah. Yeah. So talk to your gamers, talk to your customers, and that's it.
Cool. Henrik, your one.
Yes, I know I'm going to review myself what I mentioned before on the monetization track, but definitely work out how you're going to make money out of your game. Most people are really passionate of developing a game, and they think they're going to be the next big thing. But it could be the next big thing, but if you don't know how you're going to make money out of it, you won't last too long with that game on your portfolio. So definitely work out your monetization right from the beginning. That's going to give you a higher chance of success moving forward.
Cool. Thank you. Ilya, you have anything to add? Okay. Ilya, can we hear you?
It's Andrei here.
No worries.
Yeah.
Well, Ilya is getting there. Yeah. So Andrei, would you?
Yeah, I would repeat the same. Talk to your customers, not only online on Facebook or on the App Store, but have a calls with them, do the video calls, and you'll be surprised that you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how they are willing to talk to you and how they're excited to talk to the developers of the game. Is it a new game or it's a live game? It's really good for them. They can do it for free, and they're happy to do it. Yeah. This happens.
Cool.
And secondly, I would say choose wisely the type of game you're making, the genre you're entering into. Gaming became so competitive, saturated, and mainstream by any means. And making just the same game against the biggest companies, the biggest games out there, you're most likely not going to succeed. Perhaps if you don't have crazy budget and experience, go to a niche. And anyway, every niche is still huge. And I would rather suggest to think of the niches rather than to do another match-free game, which happens quite often, right?
Cool, thank you. There is a tip from Manuel, who is writing it on the chat. So he's saying, be persistent and don't be afraid to dive into the unknown. Nothing is rocket science, and most people in the industry are ready to point it in the right direction, which is a good one. Thank you, Manuel. Ioana, do you have anything to share? What would you advise to the people who are willing to launch a game? We can't hear you for some reason.
I would say professional feedback is super important. Like a lot of the time it's easy to kind of launch and do your own thing. But feedback from either another successful studio, if you can get somebody you trust, or again, a publisher, even if you don't want to work with them, but you can find somebody friendly that's willing to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
They do things differently. They've probably seen games like yours and solved your problems. And they will probably think of solutions that, you know, you may think about as well, but may not know how to prioritize or may not prioritize correctly. So for instance, one thing we see in games is, for instance, we sometimes see games with great day 1 retention and horrible day 7 retention.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually because the game is either too easy or there's not enough content. So you need people to tell you, hey, I get to this stage and get bored and this is what, but you know, they will not tell you this is what I'd like to see next. So you kind of need to figure that out. So working with somebody who solved those problems before many times will help you fix your game faster. It can save you months of work, even of trial and error. So I would say definitely don't go about it on your own. Another thing I see is people are afraid of their game getting copied. If your game is on the store, if it's any good, it will probably get copied. It will not get copied because you show it to people. It will just, that's the nature of the industry right now. It happens quite a lot. It's very hard to copyright a game. So what you can do, the only thing you can do is be faster and be successful before anybody else. So you actually want to show it and you want to let people see it and play it. And get professional feedback, because a solid publisher will never ruin their relationship with a good developer that made a good game so they can make a copycat. Like, they will not do that. If somebody else comes to them with a better game than yours that's very similar, they will publish it, but they will not publish the game. So what you want to do is move fast and make sure you get that feedback and you implement it as soon as possible, because if somebody else does it first, nobody cares.
You were first there, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, everybody cares that they liked one and they don't like yours. So definitely don't be afraid to do that. And specifically with the large kind of publishers in the market right now, they like having good relationships with devs. That's everything to them. That's their bread and butter. So definitely keep an open relationship and an open conversation, because people will be open to give you advice and to help.
Super, thank you. And Nate, do you have anything to suggest here?
The biggest thing for us in terms of advice would be actually to keep it simple. One mistake that we made very early on was that we spent a lot of time trying to build something that ultimately would not work. So our theory going forward is basically to focus on making the smallest iterative changes that you can basically make in any given time. In our case, we do these week-long sprints. Make this change, do 20% of the work of what your grand vision is, because that 20% of the work will have 80% of the impact. And this way you don't spend a bunch of time, effort, and resources on things that aren't actually going to have an impact on your game. That's probably the biggest thing we could suggest.
Thank you. So listen to your users, talk to your customers, have a good relations with your colleagues and publishers, and definitely do a good research. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone who stayed here until the end, and thank you very much to our amazing speakers. So as I said, we're going to publish the video and the recap of the webinar at the end of this week. We will be sending it to you via email, and we'll publish it also on our social networks, so you can see them right there in the chat. And we will definitely be repeating it. So guys, stay tuned, and thank you all very much. Bye. It was a pleasure chatting to you.